Hello again, welcome back to the potting shed. Today it's time to repot my behemoth of a houseplant, my Blue Star Fern. It's amazing, isn't it? I probably say this about a lot of my houseplants, but this genuinely is one of my favourite houseplants out of all of the ones that I keep. I repotted this 2 years ago in 2021, March 2021. That's the beauty of making YouTube videos, is you can actually look back and find out exactly when you did things. And this grew out of its pot 2 years ago, and it is very much ready for another pot. The rhizomes are walking out of the top of the pot, and the roots, I'll see if I can show you. You see that? There is a carpet of roots underneath the bottom. So that's going to be fun trying to get it out of the pot. But I love it. It's a great looking plant. I'm going to try and not let it touch my mic, or else it's going to make a right racket. Apologies if it does. But it has this beautiful blue, I don't even know, the colour is just beautiful. It's like a powdery bluey green colour. It is stunning. It just looks like some sort of plant you would expect to be growing in the Jurassic period with dinosaurs pounding past. You know, it has just got that amazing look about it, and it just keeps getting bigger, and I love it. If you have a look under here, it has these tiny little, let's see if that will focus, it has these tiny little spores at the bottom of the leaf, and what you can actually do if you're careful, let's put that down, you can pick those little spores off, and you can actually germinate a new plant from those tiny little spores. Put it on a surface of some moist compost, put a little bag over it to retain the moisture, and within a few weeks you will actually get tiny little new fronds from them. So a really interesting way to propagate this plant. Generally they're clump forming, so it's propagation by division is the easiest way. But I don't want to make this smaller. Why would I want to make this smaller? I'm going to put it in a bigger pot. I'm not going to divide it. I'm just going to let it do its thing because it's magnificent and I love it. Yeah, it will be a bit of a challenge trying to wrangle this out of its pot, but I've got a bigger one somewhere. There we go. It's a bigger pot. There's not much to say about it. It's probably twice the size. I like these plastic ones you can get from a garden centre. Here's a tip. If you need a big pot, if you go to the houseplant section, the bigger houseplant pots are really expensive, but if you go into the general gardening section and buy like an outside generic plastic pot, they're a fraction of the price. This costs less than £5, whereas a pot this size in the houseplant section, £25 or more. So a big difference. Well worth looking out for. And it's quite a nice looking pot. Generally, I want to use a plastic pot. Don't be tempted by terracotta. They are beautiful, but this plant doesn't like to dry out, and terracotta will absorb the water. The walls of a terracotta plant pot are porous. If you put water in there, it will take on that water, so it'll be taking moisture away from the roots. You don't want that in this type of plant. So plastic, it's the best way to be. Just make sure there is holes in the bottom. There wasn't holes in the bottom, so just drilled a hole in the bottom. It's not a big deal. Took all of about 20 seconds. So that's what I'm going to use. Now, what about soil? What are we going to use? Well, a very brief overview. I've done a care guide on this before, but this is an epiphyte. So it doesn't grow in the traditional manner. It grows up in the canopy on other trees in the tropical and subtropical rainforests of South America. It's not a parasite. It doesn't feed off of the host. It just lives on it. It rests on it, and it's rhizomous or rhizomaceous plant. That's an awesome word, isn't it? So it carries these caterpillar-like rhizomes. I'll try and get a shot for you. You can see They look like little fluffy, hairy caterpillars. Look at that, you can see it's ready to repot because it's climbing out, but it's full of these jobs. You see those? And those are actually where it's taking on its moisture from the general humidity and the environment, so they stay on the top. If you're repotting one of these, you don't bury them, that stays on the surface, and the new fronds come out from the rhizomes. They're effectively modified stems of the plant. Really fascinating thing and a really interesting type of plant. Now, a little bit about the care as I'm here. From my experience, this is a fern, but it likes much brighter light generally. Really bright indirect light. Not direct light, it's going to scorch the leaves, but a really bright room without direct sun, and even a tiny bit of direct sun's okay, or tolerate it. So it's quite unlike other ferns in that respect. And also it needs to stay relatively moist as well. It doesn't like to dry out completely. It doesn't want to be constantly soggy, maybe like the rabbit's foot fern that really won't tolerate drying out at all. You may as well just keep it in water. It's that picky. This is not the case, but it really doesn't like to dry out completely. So for that reason, I'm going to use a water retentive potting mix that's sandy to aid drainage. I'm going to put a bit of perlite in there. I don't think I've got a lot left, but I've got some. Put a bit of perlite in there. That also helps retain the moisture as well as allowing drainage. We want to get the drainage through, but we don't want it so well drained that it doesn't retain the water, because in this mix I think keeping it a little damper is going to keep it healthier, and these leaves are going to look better for it. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to see if I can wrestle it out of this pot. It's going to be hard because the roots have grown everywhere, so I might need to do some hacking. My trusty harvest knife, and we'll see how we go. So first of all, I'm just going to put some soil in the bottom of this pot. It's quite a bit bigger, so I'm just going to get a bit of soil, maybe a third of the way up, just to get it started. I don't know why I just poured that in on my seat. That's probably not the best place to do it. Anyway, the mix I'm using, it just looks like soil. I don't know why I showed you that. This is a John Innes number 2 mix, so it's a little heavier. It's got a lot of sand in it, and then I'm adding perlite to it for drainage. That's the pot sorted. Let's see how we get on getting it out of this one. It's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. Okay, not too bad. These roots are so fine. Oh, that is really jammed in there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my knife and just see if I can slide it down between the root ball and the pot, see if we can break it free. This is not good. I'll just try not to cut your fingers off while you're doing this. There we go. I've got that down in there now. I'm just going to see if I can work my way around. Haha! Success! Woo! Wow, that was quite hard work. So it's out of the pot now. We have lost a few fronds, unfortunately, but that really was stuck in there. Luckily, this old harvest knife technique has worked several times when I've had pot-bound plants. They are a really useful knife that I use like multi-purpose for everything. I cut bags open of bags of compost, getting houseplants out of pots. It's a stainless steel blade. It's actually designed to cut asparagus and things like that, but I've literally had it over 10 years and it just cuts perfectly. I've never sharpened it or anything. I'll put a link down in the description for it. It's made by Darlac. Big fan of the Darlac range. They make very good quality gardening tools at a reasonable price as well. Anyway, right, so as you can see, there's absolutely solid mass of very fine fibrous roots, and you can see the rhizomes running through the pot here and all the way through the surface. As you can see, it's spiraling around the pot now. I think it probably could have done with another pot a year ago. It's only been 2 years, but they does seem to grow rapidly. Anyway, the pot I've got, let me show you for comparison. Now that it's out, that's what it was in, and that's what it's going to. So there's a big difference. And what I also wanted is the actual much bigger surface area, because that's where the rhizomes are going to live, and that's where it gets the light and water, and I think that will benefit it quite a lot. So let's sit it in the pot here and see how it looks. That's not a bad guess, actually. That's more or less where it wants to be. I don't know if you can see that. Once again, you want the rhizomes to be on the surface. You don't want to bury the hairy caterpillars, okay? So that's about right. I'm not going to mess around with the root ball too much. I'm not going to pull it out. It's late in the summer now, and it's only going to have a few months of active growth before it goes into the slower dormancy period, so don't want to mess about with it too much. Ideally, you want to be doing any root work in the early growing season, late spring, just as it starts getting going. If you're going to sort of like knock the plant back at all, you want to give it the entire growing season to recover. So I'm not going to mess around too much. I already had to give it a bit of grief to get it out of the pot, so I'm just going to put it in, put the soil around it, get it comfortable in the pot, and leave it alone to recover for the rest of this growing season. Just put an extra handful of soil in there. That's probably all it will need. As you can see, I've had it up against a wall, so it is kind of growing over a little bit, but I'll leave it for now, and I will I'll just turn it around when I put it back where it lives, just to bring it more balanced. That's the best thing to do, is to turn your plants on a regular basis, once a month or something, and that keeps things balanced. I mean, it looks fine, to be honest with you. The problem is, when it's such a big plant, it tends to overbalance the pot eventually, so you do want to keep turning it if you can. I'm just working my way around the pot and working the soil down to make sure there are no air pockets in the soil all the way through. You can use a chopstick or a garden cane like this just to work the soil down between the roots to make sure you don't want any gaps down the side of the pot. As you can see, it's got more room to grow into, a lot more depth in this pot. That should keep it going for at least another year or so. I'll just keep an eye on it and see how it grows, but I'm looking forward to seeing this get bigger and better. Alrighty, that's pretty much it for now. I know it doesn't look a huge amount different, but we've got it in the bigger pot. It's sitting there nicely, and it's ready to go again. It's got a lot more room to grow into, and I think it should be fine. I'm now going to take it outside and give it a good water. Make sure that the water goes all the way through the pot, and that will settle the soil particles in and around the roots. So that pretty much wraps it up for this one. I'm getting overheated in the potting shed here today, so I'll say goodbye. Thank you for watching. Please give it a thumbs up if you found this video useful or helpful. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I will catch you once again on another video. Bye for now.